It's nearly 1 a.m. when I make the mistake. The highway's a stretch of concrete that's become too familiar in the last few weeks, but tonight something feels different. Maybe it's the way the fog has started to creep in from the edges of the road, or the way the streetlights flicker in the distance. I should have been home by now, but I'm running late, and my mind's somewhere else, too tangled with work, too tired. So, when I see the exit sign, I don't think twice that it's the wrong exit. The moment the car starts to drift off the main road, I know it. There's no sign, no indication that this is a place anyone should be. I glance at the GPS. It's useless. It doesn't recognize the streets here. Great that I curse under my breath, slowing down as I pass boarded-up buildings and vacant lots. This part of town is dark, too dark, and there's something off about the silence that hangs in the air. I can't remember the last time I drove through here, if I ever did. This neighborhood feels like it hasn't seen life in years that I stopped the car at a red light, but there's no one else around. The street's empty, dead quiet. I check my phone again. Still no signal. Come on, I mutter, rubbing my eyes that I've made the mistake of taking the wrong exit, but it's too late now. I have no choice but to turn around and get back on the main road. I pull over to the side of the street to check my phone, just trying to figure out the best way to backtrack. I'm sitting there, head resting on the wheel, when I hear something. Footsteps. I freeze, looking up through the rearview mirror. The street behind me is pitch black. There's nothing there, just the dull glow of a street lamp. The footsteps get louder, and I realize they're coming closer. I snap around in my seat to see a figure approaching, moving out of the shadows like he's been waiting there. Tall, dressed in dark clothes, his face hidden by a hood. I can't tell how old he is. Maybe late 20s, maybe older. I reach for the door handle instinctively, but stop myself. I don't want to make a scene. I've been in situations like this before. Maybe he just needs directions. Maybe he's some lost guy. But something doesn't feel right. The man stops just a few feet from my car. I don't open the window. I don't know if it's the best idea to make contact with someone who's standing like that. Still, he doesn't speak at first. He just stares at me, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that feels off. Like he's watching, assessing. Can I help you? I say finally, keeping my tone neutral. The man doesn't answer. His eyes are dark, too dark in the dim light. But there's something else, something unsettling in the way he looks at me, like he's waiting for me to make a move. I lean forward, trying to get a better look at his face, but he pulls his hood lower, obscuring it again. Just then, I hear the sound of a car engine, a low rumble in the distance. I turn my head, expecting to see a regular car passing by. Instead, it's another car. Black, sleek, moving too fast, coming straight down the street towards me. There's no one else around. No other cars, no people. My stomach tightens. It's too close. The headlights blind me, and I don't know if I should stay still or drive off. The figure in front of me doesn't flinch. He just stands there, his hands slightly raised like he's holding something, but I can't see what. The car pulls up next to me. It stops. I can hear the engine hum. Steady, too steady. No one gets out. I grip the steering wheel, my fingers going numb, my pulse pounding in my ears. This isn't normal. There's something wrong here. Then, the man speaks. His voice is quiet, almost calm, but there's an edge to it. Roll down your window. He says that it's not a request. I hesitate. But something in his voice, the way he doesn't flinch, doesn't seem threatened by the car, makes me do it. Slowly, I lower the window just enough to hear him better. The car behind me hasn't moved. The car's not what you think it is, he says, his gaze flicking behind me. Don't turn your back on it. I look back at the car. It's still there, like a predator waiting for its prey. The headlights shine so bright I can't see past them, but I know whoever is in that car isn't here for directions. My instincts scream at me to get out of there, but I can't move. Who are you? I manage to ask, still trying to process what's happening. The man takes a step closer, his face still hidden in shadows. Someone who knows who you're running from. I frown. Running from? I'm not. You took the wrong exit, he interrupts. But you didn't just wander into a bad neighborhood. You wandered into their turf. And now they've got their eyes on you. My heart skips a beat. My hands are shaking. I turn back toward the rearview mirror, but I don't see anything through the headlights. Just shapes. Figures. The man's tone is colder now. I'm trying to help you, but you need to trust me. Now move. Go. Before they decide you're worth more dead than alive. My mind races. I want to ask him what the hell is going on, But there's no time. His words hang in the air, a warning, a demand. I don't know who's in the car, and I don't care anymore. I put the car in gear, foot on the gas, and peel out of there without a second thought. I don't look back. As I speed down the street, my pulse racing. I realize that if I hadn't taken that wrong exit, I might not be alive right now. I don't know who the man was or why he helped me, but the headlights of that black car fade behind me. I keep driving, faster now, until I finally reach a familiar street. I pull over. My hands are still shaking. I look around, but there's nothing unusual here. No sign of the man, no sign of the car, just the empty street, the cool night air, and a lingering sense of fear that won't go away. That was no mistake. It was a warning. And I've learned, some exits you don't take, and some mistakes you don't survive.
The first story is over. Stay tuned. The next one will be even more interesting. Let's go. The night I found out I was alone in my office, my phone buzzed, a message from Sarah, my wife. She never messaged this late. At first, I thought it was nothing. Maybe something she wanted me to grab from the store or a quick "I miss you." But when I unlocked it, my stomach dropped. A photo, a message attached. "I miss you too, can't wait for tomorrow. M." That was the moment I knew. My gut twisted. I didn't need to see Matt's name to know who the hell M was. Matt, her old friend from college, the one who was always just a friend whenever I asked. I sat there staring at the screen, my mind racing. She had been sleeping in our bed, looking at me, telling me she loved me, and then sending that to him. I couldn't breathe. I could feel my palms getting clammy. I had to think. I couldn't believe it, but I couldn't turn it off either. So I did what every dumbass in my position does. I dug. I opened her emails, Facebook messages. I had access to everything, but I never used it. I trusted her. Stupid. But now, everything felt like a lie. Everything I thought I knew about us, about her, was gone. I found more texts, more photos, things that weren't just flirtation anymore. They crossed that line. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. My blood boiled, but as I scrolled through their messages, something caught my eye, one of her sent texts. What if he finds out? That was the first thing that made my mind shift. I wasn't just pissed. I was looking at a bigger picture. She was hiding something from me, from everyone. Not just the affair, but something else. I could feel it. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to walk away and play the sad, betrayed husband. I wasn't going to burn everything down on impulse either. No, I had a better plan. I pulled up Matt's profile. He had a public Instagram. A little too public if you ask me. Something about it felt too perfect. Every photo, every story was calculated. He wasn't just living his life. He was building an image, and I was going to expose it. But not in the way most people would think. I wasn't going to send those photos to Sarah's parents or blast it all over social media. No, I had a better idea. I started by following Matt more closely. It wasn't hard to find his vulnerabilities. People like him, people who think they're untouchable, leave the dumbest digital trails. Emails, posts, even business dealings. They all had one thing in common. Matt was fucking arrogant, and arrogance leaves openings. I spent the next few days digging through his digital footprint. It was like peeling back layers of a lie, a business deal gone wrong, private messages where he bragged about how he convinced women to sleep with him. He didn't just want to be loved. He wanted to control them, manipulate them. And it was all there, neatly wrapped in a history of his own making. But the best part, I found the smoking gun. One message from a few months back. He didn't know it, but I could see how he'd planned to use Sarah, how he'd manipulated her into believing she was in control of the affair. He wasn't just trying to fuck her. He was trying to destroy her piece by piece. And he had no idea I knew. I could have sent it all to her, but I didn't. That wasn't enough. I did something far more dangerous. I started leaking information, just enough for him to feel the heat. I'd already gotten access to his company's database, and let me tell you, it was a mess. A tiny, unnoticed glitch in his email system. I sent them a small mistake. Documents showing his shady dealings. A misstep here and there. things that looked just a little too sketchy for a company to ignore. When they started asking questions, when he began panicking about his job, about his finances, I didn't stop. I pushed more. A tiny anonymous tip to the people who could make it stick. A few choice screenshots. I watched him squirm from afar, and honestly, it felt good, better than it should have. But there's a cost to all this. You start digging and you realize you're not just trying to hurt the other guy anymore. You're changing. Every time I watched him sweat, every time I saw Sarah's guilt twist into more desperation, I felt it. I wasn't just hurt. I was becoming the kind of person who could destroy a life without flinching. That's what happens when you play with fire. You start burning things without realizing how close you are to the blaze yourself. But I couldn't stop, not now. I waited for him to crack. He didn't disappoint. After a week of escalating pressure, he cracked hard, started blaming everyone, begged for a way out. But by then, the power had shifted. He was no longer in control. I was, and I could do anything I wanted. I sent Sarah a final message. Not a photo, not a video, just a simple note. I hope you're ready to lose everything. She never responded. After Matt started sweating, he didn't simply curl up and vanish. He began to crawl toward anything that looked like power. He made noises about lawyers, about character witnesses, about my side of the story. That was the first red flag I missed. A man who loses everything doesn't go quietly. He becomes slippery. He starts looking for maps out of the hole he dug himself, and he's willing to follow any path that promises him air. I upped the pressure because that's what felt clean. A wrong deserved retribution, and watching him scramble felt like filling potholes with concrete. I told myself repeatedly that I was doing this for Sarah, protecting her from humiliation, from blackmail, from a guy who collected secrets like trophies. But the truth, which I didn't like, was simpler and uglier. I liked the control. For the first time since I'd been married, I felt anchored to something that wasn't compromise. It was delicious. It was poison. One night, after sending another anonymous tip to his employer about potential irregularities, I went to the bar a block over and drank until my judgment blurred. A woman at the bar asked me if I was okay. I told her everything in a voice thick with bourbon and adrenaline. The messages, the photo, the blackmail, the small thrill of pushing someone who'd hurt me down the stairs of his own life. She didn't flinch. She just said, "Careful. That guy might be the kind who breaks the ladder while you're still climbing." I laughed it off, but her words hung around my neck like a chain. Then the retaliation started, quiet at first. My email began to receive odd forwards, nothing I could put my finger on, just little things. A picture of me at a bar last year with a woman I barely knew, cropped in a way that suggested something untoward. A mention of a late-night message to an old coworker that could look like cheating if you only had half the story. Someone was planting seeds. He wasn't stupid. He knew where to jab. He'd been doing it for years. I logged into my work account from home and found a PDF waiting in my inbox, a compiled folder titled Mike Reynolds' Narrative. It had posts I'd made in private groups, screen grabs from throwaway accounts, and worst of all, a copy of a text thread between me and my brother from 2 years ago where I'd said things I didn't even like to remember. The tone of the compilation suggested it was meant for distribution. Speechless, I slammed my fist on my desk. My sleep evaporated. That night I realized the war had a second front. He could hurt me back, and he knew the vocabulary of leverage too. The difference was that his currency wasn't just money or reputation, it was chaos. He'd been crafting chaos for a living in a way I had only glimpsed before. The man knew how to seed doubt and let people harvest it like crop. He'd done it to women to get what he wanted. Now he was trying it on me. I did what I'd learned to do best, control the narrative. I called a PR person because that's what corporations do when someone tries to smear them. He laughed at me in a good way and told me to get ahead of everything by being boring and procedural. We drafted statements that were bland but unassailable. We sent emails to people who mattered, telling simple truths and asking for patience while we investigated. For a little while it worked. People who might have retweeted something waiting for a scandal didn't, because the statement from my employer made it look like the story was being handled. They hate drama unless it's already completed. If you stall them long enough, the pitchforks dull. But while I built fortifications in public, my life started to leak where I couldn't control it. An anonymous voicemail to my boss hinted at poor judgment. A screenshot of a weekend I'd told Sarah about as a golf trip showed me at late-night poker with guys who drank too much and talked too loud. The line between private and public thinned like tissue. I found myself apologizing for things I hadn't done because nobody cared about the difference between truth and perception anymore. Sarah watched all of this with a kind of exhausted shame. She sat across from me one night at the kitchen table and said, "We started a war because you couldn't be okay with being hurt." It was blunt and deserved. I wanted to flip the script and say it was his fault, that if he hadn't been scum, this wouldn't be happening. But there was no defense for the part where I'd become the one to pull the trigger. She'd been the reason this started, but I'd been the one who'd turned it into a battlefield. Then something happened that changed the tone of retaliation. A man I recognized from Matt's circle, someone I'd once shaken hands with at a neighborhood barbecue, showed up at my office door. He didn't come to argue, he came to warn. "You're playing with guys who don't believe in normal rules," he said without preamble. The warning was an understatement. The terminology he used, "They don't do reputations, they do leverage," made the hairs on my neck prick. He had the look of a person who'd lost too much and wanted to keep me from the same cliff. The tipping point was a letter I received one morning, hand-delivered and unmarked. Inside was one photograph of Sarah taken at a charity event months ago, blown up and annotated with a crude arrow and the words, "Who's he?" Someone had gone through the effort to produce it, to deliver it, to make sure I saw it in the light of my kitchen. The message wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about humiliation under floodlight. I called the pie, Rosa, and for the first time I heard fear in her voice. "You told me you wanted clean," she said. "You didn't ask for blood." She was right. I'd asked for facts, for clarity. I'd asked her to hold a mirror up to the truth. In her tone, I heard the reminder that people could be reckless when they thought they were righteous. The next sequence of days was a blur. Police reports, more anonymous drops, lawyers who told me that what I'd done technically walked an ugly edge. I'd leaked information to employers, and while I hadn't illegally hacked anything, the way I'd aggregated and sent data could be construed as harassment. There were things I'd crossed that could be pointed to in depositions. I imagined myself in a room with an opposing counsel, watching my face get picked apart into all the things I'd done to protect myself. It struck me then how fragile a man looks when he's been forced to defend himself in public. I was angry, but part of me was also embarrassed at how easily my identity had been weaponized. I kept seeing the compilation of my life in the inbox, the file labeled Mike Reynolds' narrative. A narrative is an ordered story, not necessarily truth, and someone else had been writing mine. Sarah left for a week to her sister, saying she needed distance. She called me once, voice far away on the line. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said, and it landed like a verdict. I wanted to beg, to explain, to tell her all the justification that had driven me, but every word tasted like ash. I had been so focused on making the other man suffer that I'd stopped tending to the living parts of my life that needed repair. Matt, cornered and furious, escalated in a way that made us both step back. He started a whisper campaign with a few bloggers who would run with anything smacking of scandal. He called in favors from people who owed him. He used threats to get access to a story, and then fed it a version of events designed to look like I'd staged the entire thing to ruin him. A few local outlets printed pieces that cast doubt on my stability. Friends texted me asking if I was okay. The network I'd built as a man who was reliable started to fray. One night, in a moment I can still taste like metal, Rosa called me with something I didn't want to hear. She had found a lead that suggested Matt had been working with a man who trafficked images, photos not just of consensual encounters, but of people who'd been drugged, photographed, turned into material for anonymous clients. The implication was monstrous and specific, the kind of thing that could not only ruin a man but bring dangerous people into view. "If this is true," she said, You don't want to be the only one asking questions. Her voice was shadowed, the way a diver sounds when they come up from deep water. Now the game was no longer only about reputation. It smelled like organized abuse. There were people who would not hesitate to hurt for profit. The idea that Matt might be a conduit, not just a predator, made my stomach flip into a fist. I'd never imagined that my petty domestic war would tap into something larger, uglier, and more criminal. I took a breath and did the adult thing I'd been avoiding. I called the police and told them everything Rosa had compiled. It felt like stepping into cold water. I gave them files, names, receipts. The detective who took my statement had a face like paper, but listened in a way that made me think they believed me. They asked for patience and for cooperation, and for the first time since this started, someone else was holding a piece of the burden. It was terrifying and oddly comforting. The investigation opened doors I didn't want to open. Subpoenas were issued. Matt's world began to unravel in another way. There were people with warrants, servers scanned, accounts frozen. The safety I'd been seeking by retaliating myself was now partially handled by someone with uniform and authority. But legal processes move like glaciers, slow and patient. In the meantime, the personal cost kept climbing. My employer put me on leave while they reviewed behavioral concerns. My face was in the grocery aisle for a week like a bad ad reminding me of a man who'd once been just Mike. Friends stopped returning calls. Sarah came back, but not because of anything I did. She came back because the story we were living in was wearing her down too. Her apology was the kind you issue when you can't be brave anymore. It was thin and sincere. We tried to stitch things back together like people sewing a frayed rope. It worked in the daylight, but not at night. Then one morning, I woke up to the sound of my door being pounded. Police. They had a warrant. Someone had complained. Harassment, threats, unauthorized data access. The complaint was beautifully clinical. It read like someone who'd learned how to write a legal narrative. I stood there in my bathrobe and thought about the file labeled Mike Reynolds' narrative and realized with a cold clarity that someone had learned how to make the law a weapon too. They searched the house. They took my laptop. They took my phone. I watched them tote away the things that contained my life and my crimes. I felt oddly proud and embarrassed in the same breath. Proud that I'd been effective, embarrassed that I'd been sloppy enough to leave breadcrumbs. The charges never fully materialized, nothing that stuck, not then. But the damage was structural. It's one thing to ruin a man's reputation in the court of public opinion. It's another to have law enforcement rummage through your home at dawn. My neighbors saw it. The neighborhood club had a new topic at their next barbecue. Sitting in front of the detective later, I tried to explain the calculus that had got me there. I told him about the messages, the photos, the threats. He listened without judgment and then told me the thing that flattened me. You can't be the person who balances someone's ledger. That's not how justice works. He said it gently, like a parent telling you something you already knew but were refusing to admit. So here I am now, somewhere in the middle of something that doesn't have a satisfying ending. Matt's presence is diminished. He's in custody on a different set of charges related to those images. He's quieter now but more dangerous because cornered animals are unpredictable. I am not exonerated. I'm not the noble avenger. I am exhausted, parts of me numbed like tissue that's been frozen and thawed too often. Sarah and I talk in measured sentences about custody of the dog, about dividing bills, about who keeps the houseplant by the window. The intimacy of our marriage was traded, piecemeal, for practicalities. If there's a lesson I would offer anyone reading this at 2 a.m., still nursing the sting of betrayal, it's this. Revenge is a palindrome. Whatever you write on the right side reads back on the left. You think you're carving someone else, but you are etching yourself. You can escalate until the other person breaks, but you can't control the way the pieces fall. Sometimes they fall on you. So no, that's not the end. It's a fever dream that settled into a life with more shadows. I'll wake up tomorrow and be the same man who knows how to move a narrative and how to use a keyboard like a scalpel. I'll also be the man who knows how close he came to making a bad wound permanent. I don't know whether I would do it again. Part of me, when I run my thumb over the scar, says of course protection is a reflex. Another part, quieter and ticked with ash, says never. The truth is probably between those lies. The war taught me skills. It also taught me how much I'll have to rebuild if I want to be someone better than what I became.